push into the next segment, please get out your devices to participate in the introduction of our next session, the Construction Industries the Construction Industries Customer Panel. How many years, and I don't think we have a slide for the actual question, so please listen and it should be in your app, but how many years of collective experience does the Construction Industries panel that we're about to introduce have? So the choices are 37 years, 51, 79, or 95. All right. Every time I think it's steady, more votes come in. Well, the earlier folks who voted were correct. It's 95 years. 95 years. It goes without saying we have some extraordinary panelists with deep expertise geared up for this next session. This is about the same length of time Caterpillar has been building a legacy in the construction business, with over 300 models, 1.4 million active global machines, production of a machine every 5 minutes, and a customer base that continues to grow. The construction business has been core to Caterpillar since 1925. To moderate this panel of resilient women who are building diversity and breaking the barrier in this rugged industry, we are thrilled to begin to introduce our next guest on stage. An engineer by trade, she joined Caterpillar in 1990, starting her career as a marketing sales rep, focusing on our BCP product, and she's progressed through positions around the company and around the world. Currently, as the worldwide product manager for the medium wheel loaders, she continues to demonstrate deep passion for our customers, global understanding of business trends, and maintaining an intentional focus on developing others and building a legacy. Please join me in welcoming Kristen Girard. Welcome. Thank you, Kristen.
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to be my 8.5, a lot of good gestures. Breathing deeply, very good. So I'm going to bring out a wonderful panel. We've got 95 years, I didn't even realize that until I got up here, of experience with everybody. So we're very happy to bring them out. I'm not going to give their bios because I'm going to have them talk to you about it, but I'll bring them out on stage. First up, I have Lynn Hansen, president of Crowder Constructors, and that's headquartered in North Carolina. So Lynn, come join me on stage, please. Second, we have Mary Catherine Harbin. She is the area manager and EEO officer at Maymead Incorporated. She's based in North Carolina, but they're headquartered in Tennessee. So, Mary Catherine. Welcome. Next, we have Lisa Ballerini. She is the president of Montana Construction in New Jersey. Lisa, please join us. And last but certainly not least is Mary Teichert. She's back. She was with us several years ago as one of our guest speakers, so we're really glad to have Mary back. She's the Chief Operating Officer for Teichert in California. So fabulous panel for us today. So welcome, ladies. It's going to be a fun one, I think. We've got all kinds of good stuff to talk about. So first off, since I didn't go through your backgrounds, I know you're all from family companies, and so you've got a lot to talk about from just what types of companies you work for. So why don't we start, Mary Catherine, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your background and what brought you into the family business?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me this afternoon. This has been a wonderful conference to attend, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I have been at our family business for 12 years. It is a 4-generation family business. My great-grandfather and his brother started the business, and my grandmother, then my father, and now my brother and I are in the business. I was actually not attracted to the family business at all. I did not want any part of it. I was proud of what my family was doing. I loved that it existed, but after several summers of working in the office and doing paperwork through high school and college, I did not think that a desk job, an admin job, was anything that I wanted to do, and I didn't think there would be any other route for me in the company. So I went to a liberal arts college and got a BA in English and political science, planning to lobby. I worked in the Virginia Senate for several sessions. Did not expect to have several life changes that occurred, and wound up calling my father and saying, "Can I have a job?" And to my surprise, he said, "Yes, absolutely. Go to a satellite office, show up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and have your boots on." Okay, take it. And so that's how I started my role in operations, and really didn't understand that there was an opportunity in our industry outside of a traditional office role. And now that's what has kept me there and what I really enjoy.
That's great. I think there's probably many in the audience with the same feeling that they weren't actually thinking about it. I'm one of them, being in the construction industry. Lisa, what about you? You get to work with your brothers every day.
Yes, I do. And thank you for having me as well. I want to thank Foley, Suzanne Connolly from Foley, for inviting me here. But mine is more of the American dream kind of story. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and my father started the company for my brother in 1993, and then I was going to school for fashion. I had a scholarship for fashion, and he asked me one night if I could help him part-time, and I said, "Sure, Dad, what do you need?" And he said, "Can you do payroll and prepare a bid?" And I said, "Well, I know what payroll is. I learned that in business class, but what's a bid?" And he showed it to me, and I said, "Okay, it looks like fill in the blanks. I got it." And he was like, "All right, I'm going to fire Joanne." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I started working for him part-time, but I really loved the excitement of being low bidder and bidding a project and picking up plans and specs and bonding and banking. And eventually I switched my major to business, and I've been working with him ever since. And my brothers and I have built the company something he never really imagined, because
That's awesome.
at that time it was a desk in the kitchen, in one of the kitchens in the Italian house. And we had one truck and one crew, and now I'm proud to say we have a fleet of over 300 and over 145 employees and 14 crews working, doing sewer, water main, and bridge and road construction.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, welcome. Mary, you too are a family business, part of the family, but didn't come in directly either.
That's
so
true.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
So Tykert does heavy civil construction and mining in California, and it's been there since 1887. So we have state contractor's license number 8. And I never thought I'd work there, mainly because most of our family doesn't work there. We have only had 1 or 2 family members per generation. So I grew up and did other things, and I went to Harvard Business School, got out of there in 1998, and went to work for Bain, which does strategy consulting, and then Apple. And I was at Apple having a perfectly good time directing product strategy, and my uncle came and asked if I would rejoin the family business and be his successor at someday. So I did. It was a very tempting offer, partly because there's so few family members, and it's a very precious company to me, partly from the family aspect. My great-great-grandfather was a foreman for the guy who invented expansion joints. So we've been doing concrete and asphalt in California for 131 years. So I jumped into it, and I owned 1 pair of jeans and didn't know how to put on a hard hat. I can't imagine what the guy in the QA lab thought when I showed up. But I started in QA and worked in the rock plants and sales and estimating, takeoff, precast, ready mix. I basically worked in all the different things Tykert does for a living. So I've now been there for 14 years. I've been the chief operating officer for about the last 4. And the only other family members are my uncle, who's the CEO and my boss. And then my father runs our charitable foundation, and it's just the 3 of us, and the other 2,000 employees aren't related to us. Although I often say it's many people's family business, because like many probably in this room, there's a lot of families that work for our company and a lot of fathers that invite their sons to be there. So it's been a privilege to be there.
Absolutely. Maybe we need to go back to Apple and tell them construction's where it's at.
Well, I
Take
have
all
a
those
version
people
of
into
the
our
speech that
industry.
says that's why I came there, is because it's cooler than Apple, but that's for high school, yeah.
So Lynn, what about you? You're one of the only ones not a family member, but you're part of a family business and kind of took a different route in as well.
and I was looking for a career change.
Yeah.
I think it was driven by guilt to start with, because I worked in finance in a public accounting firm and then a public company for 10 years in total. And I was guilty when I was at work because I had 2 small kids at home, 3 and 4, and I was guilty when I was at home because I needed to work. So actually a friend called and said, Crowder's looking for someone to be their VP of Finance. And I really had no construction experience. So I had financial experience, and I went and talked with them. And there were a couple of things that I really liked about Crowder. One, I could have a flexible schedule. I loved that they took care of their people just like family. And that's the nice part about being in a family business. And I loved the way the management team collaborated. And I think I actually got my job because I was diverse. And I was one of the first women in management there. But what I was looking for was to be flexible, but I didn't want to give up my career. I didn't want less. I wanted to have the same chances, opportunities that I had somewhere else. And at a family business, it's unusual that somebody outside the family would have the opportunities I've had. But I worked closely with the owners for many years. I've been at Crowder 19 years now. And I've served as a division manager, vice president of finance, and also president and CFO over the last few years. So.
That's great. Well, a great panel. You can see the 95 years here. So let's talk a little bit about the, all of your companies are experiencing a lot of growth right now. With growth means a lot of risks that you've had to take, big decisions. So how is the diversity that you have in your companies really kind of come about or come forward as you try to make decisions? And do you feel that diversity of leadership and how it impacts your business? So Lynn, let's start with you.
I think diversity of thought is probably the number one thing that makes good business decisions, helps you make good business decisions. And being in a collaborative environment, actually with a bunch of male, stale, pale men with one, with coming from the same thought process is difficult for a company. And so the owners, who were very progressive, decided that they wanted some diversity in their management, in their ranks, and we all look at risk differently, which is, I'm a little less risk averse than our VP of Finance now. Our operations and business development people have a lot more risk. They're willing to take on a lot more risk. So we balance that. We don't always agree to start with, but we work to agree. And I think that shows in our bottom line of our company.
Yeah. So have you had to change contracts? And really, as you go through those negotiations, you can feel that diversity coming through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. One of my biggest jobs is to read contracts. And 10 years ago, we didn't read all those contracts. And we were in some lawsuits that now we're not in. So it's really important in a construction company to look at all the risks.
Read that fine print.
Yes.
So Lisa, what about you? I mean, you've just won some big contracts lately. I think you've been working together as a family, and you were talking to me earlier about some of the diversity and working with your family and how it's changed with having you there.
Yes, I think it was important that when I was younger to be involved with my brothers, to have that female perspective as a young company, because I am very conservative, and I ultimately became in charge of the money, which was good because my brothers and my father were more risk takers and gamblers. So if you're in public bidding, you gamble every day.
Yeah.
So they were gambling there, so I had to make sure cash flow-wise we weren't gambling anywhere else. And I think the fact that myself and my brothers respect each other's opinions, we don't always agree, but we agree to disagree. And I think having that female perspective sometimes, is less of an ego-driven decision-making. That's not to say no women have egos, but I've seen in situations where if it's all men in the room, sometimes someone has to step back and say, let's think about what the end goal is here, and let's accomplish that, and let's forget about who's right or who's wrong, and really what's the best thing for the company and the project and the owner.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think, I mean, it's true. Having that balance really kind of helps pave the way for a different kind of thinking.
Yes.
So we just had a great panel. All of us were sitting for the last sort of, 45 minutes, talking about the need for more talent to come into the industry. Overall, we've got a talent shortage. We're not attracting a lot of females, but the overall opportunity of how do we go out there and get more people to come to the construction industry, how do we attract them, and what do we do to bring that together? We have some great ideas. Actually, we've got some good action items I think we're going to work together on. But Mary Catherine, one of the things, you're also the EEO officer in your company. So talk a little bit about that and what that's done for you in diversity recruiting and how it's changed the way you guys look at who should be in the makeup of your company.
Okay. I actually became our EEO officer in the middle of an EEO audit. It's an interesting way to start that kind of position. But I really took the opportunity to learn, whereas a lot of the contractors that I deal with on a daily basis really push against a state agency coming in and saying, what are you doing, and all these different initiatives. I thought, this can make us a better company. How do we take the legislative agenda and turn it into something we believe and breathe and do every day? So we have really worked very diligently to make sure that our workforce mirrors the demographics of every area that we're in. And not every crew looks the same, because not every crew is based in the same geography, in the same geographic area. So the demographics are different on every crew. But I am proud to say that we have 12 women on our roadway crews doing actual skilled labor positions. We have a lady that runs a paver. We have a lady that runs the screed on the back of the paver. We have roller operators and dump truck drivers. And I think that that's because we have so embodied what we say we believe on the EEO side. I say that my dad, who's the president of our company, is the biggest feminist that I know, because he has never questioned what my abilities were, what I was able to do. And when I was expecting my first child, he was the one who said, well, just bring him with you. And that's what I did. So I had a nursery in the office, and I think we've made it more accessible for women to see that they can do what we do every day. On a personal note, my daughter has spina bifida. She has a disability that she was born with, and when the EEO protected classes changed to include disabled veterans as well as or protected veteran status as well as disabled individuals, I was presenting that to our company. We have a company-wide meeting every spring, and I got choked up. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm crying in front of this group of people. It's 250 people, and most of them are men. And I think that I got more credibility and more traction with that group, talking about how much I believed in what I was saying, and the fact that my daughter could have a chance, whether it was in our company or another organization, because of those laws, and that we don't just want to check a box, that we really want to do it and believe it every day. I think that authenticity, taking that with me, has taken me a long way.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's some of the stuff we've been talking about this week, with the authentic leadership, being willing to be vulnerable, show the emotion. I think probably goes a long way with a lot of people to build the credibility.
That's the hope.
So Mary, we talked a lot about the stuff that you're doing in your company as well to attract talent, both from externally and then also growing talent inside. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you guys are doing, and because I think there's a lot of people who have family businesses here who are trying to do the same thing. So I think whether it's a dealership or an actual customer, I think there's a lot of good parallels.
Sure. I came to women's issues somewhat late, like in the last 3 years or so. I've been more thinking about it, partly because I grew up, like probably most of you did, with my dad saying, you can do anything the guys can do. And so I had this idea of parity from the beginning, and I thought, well, we're all having to do the same things. We have to be good at our jobs. That's what we do. But then suddenly looking around and realizing, but there aren't any women. So what's up with that? And I am in a really good position to address that if anybody can. So what I did for starters was gather up the few women that we have in operating roles. We're blessed with many women in support roles. So we have folks in HR and finance, and some that more traditionally have women in them. But we have about 150 people who are project managers, estimators, superintendents, that kind of role, and only 16 of them are women. And so suddenly realizing, what's the matter? And so I gathered them all up a few years ago and said, well, let's talk about it, and let's figure out if we want to take some actions or if we just want to get to know each other better since there's so few of us and we're all spread out. And what we came to was a few things. One is that there isn't much of a pipeline. So I was fairly proud that I was mentioning earlier we hired all of the women in the graduating class of Chico's construction management program, but that's only 4. And so you look at that and say, well, I want Teichert to be an attractive place for women to work, and there needs to be more women that are available, that are candidates that we can choose from, so we have outstanding women. I've always liked the quote from Warren Buffett he said, part of the reason for his success is that he only had to compete with half the population. So I'm like, if we have a bigger talent pool, if we can draw from everybody, just imagine what is possible. And so the group has, since we basically get together once a quarter for lunch. And I said, so if you'd like, we can actually take more time and do something, or we can keep doing this because everyone's got busy day jobs. And to their credit, the group sort of voted on 2 initiatives. One is on mentoring and development of the women that are here, and 2 is outreach and recruiting of women that are not yet here. And so the outreach and recruiting group has done some somewhat innovative things. This was the first year we had a Take Your Daughters to Work Day. Nationally, it's gotten a little more balanced, and it's Take Your Daughters and Sons to Work Day. So I had a slightly apologetic cover note and said, we're not doing that. Sorry, but it's sponsored by Women in Operations, and so we're going to pilot it with just daughters. One of the reasons for that is that the 16 women that we do have, every single one of them had construction or mining or farming in their family. So they had an uncle or a dad or somebody that they knew and could see what this lifestyle was like and what the benefits of it were and what you had to do. And so I thought, rather than boil the ocean of all of the girls in the world, that it would be nice if they would choose construction. Let's start with ones that know about it, which is daughters of our employees. And so we did Take Your Daughters to Work Day, and it was terrific, very well received. We had a dad that drove, he's one of our craft guys, he operates a backhoe. He drove 3 hours to drop her off at 6 in the morning at our corporate office before stuff started and drive back to work just so she could be part of it. So there's a lot of commitment in the world, and trying to gather them up and have these girls start thinking about construction as a business was really a rewarding project. That same group is also doing outreach to colleges because we hire a lot of project engineers and mining engineers directly from school. And so we do things like, we have an equipment rodeo every other year where people can come operate all of your wonderful equipment. And so we basically went out to the schools we recruit from, and the ladies in the operations group went and gathered up, the local women in construction groups from those schools. So here's the women at Chico and women at Sac State, women at Fresno State, and reached out to them personally and just said, hey, I'm at Teichert and I want to bring you guys along. You want to come, drive a D10 and have a barbecue lunch? And so we got a bunch of girls that came over to just drive iron and see what it was like, and also see a model of someone that wasn't that far out of school that liked doing that and was having a good time. And so I think it's got a couple messages. One is that our category of construction is accessible for women and is kind of fun. And 2 is that they can see someone like them doing it. So here's some ideas on how it can be done. One thing I've decided over time, I don't know if it's a plus or a minus that there aren't so many women, because whatever I do is what women do. And so I get to do it. And so we basically decided what women do here is all of this interesting stuff. We get to have lots of really good opportunities, access to jobs, good experiences. And so right now we're also working on the mentoring side. We drew men into that part of the program and said, myself, like probably many of you, many of my fabulous mentors have been men, and we have to make sure that they're included in thinking about how are we bringing women along. And so our mentoring program is led by 2 of the ladies from this group, as well as one of our senior construction managers who's a man, and figuring out how are we going to mentor and bring these women along. So some combination of trying to make this feel like a good place to work for people that are here, having them model it for folks that aren't in the system yet, and then reaching down as far as we can into the pipeline and having girls who are thinking about all the different choices in life think about this as a viable career are the most we've been able to think of so far, because we have a long way to go.
Yeah, we had a really great conversation, though. I think, Lynn, you're kind of working locally and with the state on how do we attract more women. And then, we talked a lot about actually coming up with programs we can do together. And so that will be one of the things we will challenge the bigger group is, could we do an event for females at maybe a dealership? And could we maybe take a customer day you're doing anyway and bring your daughters? We talked about maybe bringing some of their people into our Breakthrough Leadership for Men or Women courses and doing a little pilot with that. So those are all things that we're going to work together coming out of here and make sure that it's not just a 2-day event. We all go away and we learned a lot, which is good, but how do we create even more action with it? So I think we had some great conversations. The one part, did we talk about, getting the women inside? That was the other thing we talked about, and using the breakthrough leadership. So I don't know if you guys want to maybe jump in on the, there's several women in Tykert that you even wanted to bring today.
Yeah.
And trying to get them to make the choice that they can go beyond what they're doing today and advance and progress. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Mary.
Well, one thing that I had shared, so the 3 most senior women that we have, I'm sort of focusing really hard. Sponsoring was a great word I've heard at this conference, but focusing hard on sponsoring them and trying to help make sure that they are getting every opportunity they can to advance. But it's hard because all of us have choices to make. I have 2 little boys, and I love them, and they're awesome. And so I can understand why people want to do that. But the woman that I wanted to bring to this, she has kids, and she's been part-time for 10 years. I know she can run a division. She can totally do it. And so when she's ready to come back and get the experience that she would need to be eligible for that kind of position, she's going to be amazing. So I said, well, why don't you just come to this with me and just see what are people doing? But she didn't want to leave her kids for 2 nights. And I thought, I get that, and I kind of wish that we could somehow figure something different out. And so balancing out the personal choices that all of us have to think about, and at the same time, if you don't get the experiences and the thoughts and all of the exactly practical stuff about running a P&L, making money, then you're not eligible to do the next thing. So in about 6 years, when I'm going to need a division president, if she won't be available to do the jobs that would prepare her to be that, then she won't be a candidate. And so her view is still, well, in 4 or 5 years, I'll maybe be ready to think about that. And I'm like, you can't just think about it when the role comes up. You have to have thought about it in time to have developed the experience and the track record and the capabilities that we know you can do that job when it becomes available. So we have not figured that part out, but trying to understand how to communicate that respectfully, because I also don't want to pressure her and think lots of people validly choose staying home with their kids, and that's fine. And as a manager, I miss not having more women that are coming up, and having a really talented one not choosing to do things that would make her eligible for this role is really tough. So haven't figured that out. I feel like, the leadership programs are neat. Having her start to understand what's possible, I think, is maybe part of it. But I think that's one of the issues that I struggle with, and I'm really excited to talk to other customers and people about how you're doing that, is to help people who are working through life balance issues just decide to choose the awesome parts of work also.
Yeah, because all of us made those choices, right? And found a way through it. So I think it's, we'll come back to that and talk about some lessons learned and things in that space. But is there any questions from the audience? I'd be happy to take a few questions if anybody has them. Hey, there's people out there. Anybody have any questions for these guys? Yeah.
Hi, my name's Erin. I'm with Finning International. I'm very excited about this panel. One of the questions I have in relation to the comment around bring your sons to work versus bringing your daughters to work and the challenge there, how did you message this appropriately so that it was perceived as equal opportunity and that sons weren't being excluded from the opportunity and girls weren't being given special treatment?
That is an outstanding question. And actually, my boss asked me, he's like, so are we still hiring men? Yeah. So what I said was that this is the first year that we've ever done it because logistically in a construction company, it's hard to bring your kids to work because of the work that we do. So what I said in the note was that we're piloting a program this year to start bringing our children, and that nationally it's Take Your Daughters and Sons to Work Day, and we hope over time to develop a robust program that can do that. But this year, since we're piloting it, we're going to do a smaller program focused on daughters that is being sponsored and conducted by the Women in Operations group. And we didn't get any pushback on that. I think partly it's because I did highlight that we're doing it and it's a pilot. And frankly, that's true because we had never done it before and didn't know what was going to happen with taking all these girls out to construction sites and plants. But it was wonderful. And so I think I'd like to expand it to the point where we could include sons. But yeah, I didn't get any complaints after that. I think part of it was acknowledging that you're right, that's what we're doing. It was a good question.
Any other questions? Thank you for that. All right, be thinking of it because I'm going to go back to, so maybe Lynn will shift to you and talk about, with your career, with all, you've been in different industries, you've been now in a family business, what lessons learned have you had along the way, or what advice would you offer in managing both the career, the family, and some of the things that you've experienced?
I think as a woman in construction, it's hard to be there alone.
Yeah.
I have, I've had 25 years of a career, 30 years of a career now, I guess. And when I first started in public accounting, I was always in a room of men, and I was the only woman a lot of times, and it was hard to speak up. And I think women sometimes don't say exactly what they think. They take it all in and go away, but it's really important to have that voice. And it's good to have an advocate, a sponsor, a mentor, a peer that can help you have that voice. And I'm very lucky. I have Claudia Dodgen, who's our VP of Employee Services and People Development. And she and I look at things differently, and we don't always get along, but we look at things reasonably sometimes too. Yeah. And if we have to fight a hard battle, it's nice to have somebody else on your side. Yeah. Because those battles are worth fighting, because especially when you've got so much on the line, and like we're gamblers every day. Yeah. So it's important to fight those battles. So I guess my advice is have someone that is in your corner that you can go to for advice, counseling, coaching. Learn to sit like like we're sitting up here today.
You're doing great gestures.
But I think that's the most important thing, and keep learning. I mean, I think that's the difference between women in leadership and women just doing their job every day. That we want to learn and use what we learn in different ways. So I just give that advice to you.
Absolutely, great. Mary Catherine, what about you? Is there something you haven't talked about? We got into your daughter, we got into that. Is there any advice? I mean, you did a great job of kind of bringing it right with you and doing the balance.
In a family business, which I think most of us are in at this point, it's really difficult to separate family and business. I work with my brother every day. I work with my father every day. I work with my grandmother every day. She turned 88 this week. And so feeling comfortable and like you are a peer when you roll into the room and you sit down at the table, and being willing to speak up with the confidence that you're dealing on equal footing is very, very important. And I don't think there's such a thing as work-life balance. I think there's work-life spaghetti. I don't know what it is, but asking for help, reaching out, having the support system. Lynn has hit on so many things that it's just critically important to know what your goals are and be willing to go for them. Be willing to go out of town, Mary, and just put yourself out there. Put yourself out there and have the confidence to do that, and know that you're going to do the very best thing for your children that you possibly can. There's no doubt that you're a good mother. You don't need the mom guilt. You don't.
It's true.
So being there for your children and being there for your employee base and doing your job well, I don't think are mutually exclusive. I really don't. But I do think that it is a very well-oiled machine when you have to get it all running, and having the support system for that is very important.
Okay. Any other questions before I keep moving forward with the others? Yes. Lucy.
Hello?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm a member of a family business, and I'm curious because it sounds like there's a differing opinion on how many family members should work in the business. And Mary, you were really conscious to outline that almost maybe intentionally only a couple of you are there over 130 years. And then whereas Mary Catherine says you work with kind of everybody in your family. I'm just curious if you would address that and if it's intentional or if it's just how it is.
Can I address that from not being in the family?
Yeah, there you go.
It's hard when you have a lot of family members from an outside perspective. Yeah. It's a balance. But, we have a kind of a family member board of directors. They're not really on the board, but they get knowledge that way. And I have found that it's good to have a couple of family members, but it's hard to deal with. You know, you're dealing with doing work, and then having a lot is hard.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that a lot of opinions and trying to balance that. Anybody else have anything to add
Well,
on
what
that?
Lynn said is exactly why we haven't had very many, is because we feel like we want professional managers who've come up through the ranks and earned their stripes to not feel like they're going to get displaced by a family member that needs a job. So over the course of time, it's worked out. I think, so in the early 1900s, there was a lot of family in there, but I think right around 1930 or so, we started kind of winnowing it down. My grandfather was a little more focused on professional management and trying to get people that had, you know, a construction background or a mining background to run construction or run mining. And I think that was a coincidence. You know, I think his brother was one of those guys that would come into the bid room and say, we should bid $1 million. You know, he was that guy. So my grandfather's like, let's not do that. But the nice thing about it has been that effect is that people can be at Tykert for 30 or 40 years, be president of a division, and never worry that they're going to not be able to do their job because a family member was going to take it over. So for us, it's been pretty powerful. And then because we have that expectation, it also avoids kind of the hurt feelings and the issues that sometimes go on at other companies I talk to, where there's people that want to be in the business and can't. Because here, since we don't really have more than one or two, there's no one that thinks they can do that. So we don't have a lot of that worry. When I started there, I asked if people were going to be concerned that I was there or not like it. And they said it is nice to have one or two, because then you feel like the family's still committed, because the family is still the majority of the shareholders, and we're the board, also the board's family. But that way, they feel commitment, but they don't feel any professional threat.
Well, and I think Lisa's probably the most qualified person to answer the question, but just from my perspective, very briefly, I think it's vitally important for everyone to know their role.
Yes.
And that my brother has the operations he's over. I have the areas in the business that I cover. And as long as everyone understands what their position is and what their part to play is, that it can be successful.
And I definitely can attest to the family business. And when I say 5 siblings, when we started in the 90s, it was a bunch of 20-year-olds, and the family was broke. So you can imagine what kind of infighting went on when we were struggling for who was going to do what and who was in charge and who was going to make a decision. But I have to say that I can only attribute my success and the success of Montana Construction to the fact that both of my brothers take a key role in the business. And obviously we're a much younger company, first generation, but myself handling the money, the finance, the banking, the bonding, and my brother Vincent being a tremendous estimator, and Dominic, the director of operations, is a logistic genius. I mean, he is in charge of mobilizing and demobilizing every piece of equipment and the 14 crews every day. And we don't just do large projects. We do a $5,000 water line, and that means, you know, that's a one-day job in and out. And I have to say we all respect each other's position, like you said, but we all get up and we go to work. And if that means I have to be in early or be there late or on a Saturday or on a Sunday, you know, we all do what we have to do, because at the end of the day, Montana feeds the family, so we have to take care of Montana.
No, that's good.
And the company's named after Joe Montana anyway, if anyone's wondering.
Excellent, excellent. So Mary, I know we're right at time. You had a couple things, maybe words of advice you wanted to offer to everyone as well.
Sure. Well, I was willing to share what one of my personal credos that's been really valuable for me is a quote that I think is attributed to St. Augustine, which is that resentment is like taking poison and hoping the other guy dies. And I'm thinking that's gotten through a lot of really interesting times, because there's lots of places where you can wish other people were doing things differently, or wish that somebody wouldn't act that way, or wish people would do things to help me out. And all of that eats me up and doesn't affect them at all. And so one of the things that's been super helpful for me in my career is thinking about where am I going to spend my energy, because I only have so much of it. And so to quote Victoria from yesterday, how do I be Mary and show up in the positive way that's making the job and the role and the life that I want to have, instead of worrying too much about what do I wish other people were doing. And there's plenty of that. I think it's the snowplow analogy yesterday was really good, that sometimes it is pushing a ball uphill, and it's not always easy being the only woman in the executive group or one of the very few in the whole management team. But the whole point is, okay, well, anyway, so what am I going to do? What's interesting for me? So that was the one thing I was thinking
Good.
about.
I definitely wanted you to get that in there because I think that's point maybe that it hasn't. Resilience came out, but I'm not sure that point came out when you sent that to me. I think it's really important. Lisa, I didn't want to cut you off. Is there any advice you'd offer to anybody?
You know, the only thing I can say, I was so young and uneducated when I got into this business, but I look back then and now, and decisions were so easy to make because when you have nothing to lose. So at 20 years old and 25 years old, I just went with my gut. And I have to tell you women, just do it. Go with your gut. If your gut tells you to apply for a job or, speak up in a meeting or whatever it is, that's why, you have that instinct. And go with it because I don't think I would have been where I am today if I didn't do that as such a young lady in this industry. So that's the only thing I could say.
Awesome. Great advice. So thank you guys very much. First of all, thank you for all your business to Caterpillar. We are grateful for that. And thank you for your time today and all your wonderful insights. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.